behind the smile. Dr. Maya Chen's hands were trembling as she stood in the sterile hallway of Riverside Dental Clinic at 3 in the morning, staring at the resignation letter she'd just pulled from her locker. The paper wasn't hers. It belonged to Sofia Reyes, her dental assistant of 2 years, and it was dated for next week. Maya's chest tightened as she read the words that felt like they were ripping something vital from inside her. Sofia was leaving, and Maya hadn't even known she was unhappy. The fluorescent lights hummed above her, casting harsh shadows that seemed to mirror the sudden darkness spreading through her heart. She had come back to the clinic to retrieve her forgotten phone, never expecting to find the one thing that would shatter the careful, professional distance she'd maintained for so long. Because the truth was, Maya had been hiding behind her own smile for 2 years, pretending that the way her pulse quickened when Sofia walked into a room meant nothing at all. Maya had always been the picture of success. At 32, she owned her practice, had a spotless reputation, and was known throughout the community for her gentle touch with anxious patients. Her life looked perfect from the outside, a carefully constructed image of a woman who had everything figured out. But inside, Maya was drowning in loneliness. She'd built walls so high around her heart that she'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone in. After her last relationship ended badly 3 years ago, she'd made a silent vow to focus only on her career, to never again risk the vulnerability that came with loving someone. Then Sofia had walked into her clinic for a job interview, and everything Maya thought she knew about protecting herself began to crumble. Sofia was 28, with warm brown eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense Maya had carefully erected. She was efficient, compassionate with patience, and had a laugh that could light up the darkest room. From the very first day, there had been something electric in the air between them, an unspoken connection that Maya felt in every accidental brush of their hands, every shared glance over a patient's open mouth, every moment they stood side by side at the sterilization station. Maya had told herself it was just admiration, just professional respect. She'd repeated this lie so many times that she'd almost believed it, burying her feelings under layers of cool professionalism and forced distance. But Sofia had a way of breaking through without even trying. She remembered how Maya took her coffee, always had an encouraging word ready when a procedure went badly, and somehow knew exactly when Maya needed silence and when she needed to talk. During long days, they'd developed a rhythm that felt like a dance, moving around each other with practiced ease, anticipating needs before they were spoken. Maya found herself living for those moments, when their eyes would meet across the dental chair and Sofia would give her that small, knowing smile that seemed to say she understood everything Maya couldn't put into words. It was torture and heaven all at once. This feeling of being seen and yet having to pretend. She felt nothing beyond professional appreciation. The turning point had come 6 months ago during a particularly difficult case. An elderly patient had come in with severe dental trauma from a fall, terrified and in pain. Maya had worked for hours, her back aching, her eyes burning from the focused concentration. Sofia had stayed late without being asked, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of the emergency procedure. When it was finally over and the patient was resting comfortably, Maya had looked up to find Sofia watching her with such tenderness that it had stolen her breath. For one unguarded moment, Maya had let her mask slip, and she'd seen her own longing reflected back in Sofia's eyes. The air between them had crackled with possibility. With all the words they'd never said, Maya had opened her mouth ready to finally be honest, ready to risk everything. But then fear had crashed over her like a wave, and she'd turned away, mumbling something about cleaning up, and the moment had passed like smoke through fingers. After that night, something had shifted between them. Sofia had grown quieter, more reserved. The easy warmth that had always existed between them had been replaced by a careful politeness that hurt worse than any rejection. Maya had noticed the change but hadn't known how to fix it without admitting the truth. She was still too afraid to speak. She'd watched Sofia retreat behind her own professional mask, and it had felt like watching the sun disappear behind clouds, knowing she was the one who'd driven it away. The clinic had become a place of exquisite pain, every day a reminder of what Maya was too cowardly to reach for. Now, standing in the empty hallway with Sofia's resignation letter in her hands, Maya finally understood the cost of her fear. She'd been so busy protecting herself from potential hurt that she'd guaranteed herself actual loss. Sofia was leaving because Maya had made it impossible for her to stay, had created an environment where Sofia's feelings had nowhere to go but inward. Festering into the decision to walk away entirely, Maya sank down onto the floor, her back against the wall, and let the tears come for the first time in years. She cried for the time they'd wasted, for the words left unspoken, for the possibility of love she'd been too afraid to embrace. She cried for the girl she used to be, the one who'd believed in taking risks, before life had taught her that love could hurt more than she thought survivable. But somewhere in the midst of her breakdown, something else began to emerge. It was a small voice at first, barely a whisper, but it grew stronger with each passing moment. It was the voice that asked why she was giving up without even fighting, why she was letting fear make this decision for her. Maya thought about the patients she treated every day, people who came to her terrified of pain but who sat in her chair anyway because they knew that avoiding the dentist would only make things worse in the long run. She was asking them to be brave every single day while she herself was being a coward about the most important thing in her life. The realization was like cold water to the face, shocking her into clarity. Maya stood up, her decision made before she'd fully processed what she was going to do. She looked at the resignation letter one more time, then carefully folded it and put it in her pocket. She wasn't going to pretend she'd never seen it, wasn't going to let this moment pass the way she'd let so many others slip away. She was going to fight for this, for Sofia, for the possibility of something real and beautiful and terrifying. Her hands were still shaking, but now it was with nervous energy rather than despair. The next morning, Maya arrived at the clinic an hour early. She'd spent the rest of the night planning what she would say, rehearsing words that felt inadequate to express the depth of what she felt. When Sofia walked through the door at 8 o'clock sharp, looking beautiful and heartbreakingly sad, Maya was waiting. She'd cleared her schedule for the morning, something she'd never done before, and the gesture alone made Sofia pause, confusion flickering across her features. Maya asked her to come into the private office, her voice steadier than she felt. Sofia followed, and Maya could see the wariness in her posture, the way she held herself like someone expecting bad news. Maya didn't sit down behind her desk the way she normally would. Instead, she stood in the middle of the room, vulnerable and exposed, and pulled the resignation letter from her pocket. She watched Sofia's eyes widen with recognition and something that looked like panic. Then Maya began to talk, and once she started, the words poured out like water from a broken dam. She told Sofia everything, about the fear that had ruled her life for 3 years, about the walls she'd built and why she'd built them. She talked about the moment she'd first seen Sofia and how something inside her had recognized something essential, something she'd been missing without even knowing it. She spoke about every shared glance, every almost moment, every time she'd wanted to reach out and hadn't. Her voice cracked when she admitted how she'd seen her own feelings reflected in Sofia's eyes that night 6 months ago and had been too afraid to acknowledge them. Maya explained that she'd spent years believing that protecting herself from pain was the same as protecting herself, but she'd finally realized they were opposite things. She said that she'd been so focused on avoiding hurt that she'd created a life that was safe but empty, professional but lonely. She told Sofia that reading that resignation letter had felt like a wake-up call, like the universe giving her one last chance to stop being afraid and start being brave. And then, with her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, Maya said the words she should have said months ago. She told Sofia that she had feelings for her that went far beyond professional respect or friendly affection, that she thought about her constantly, that she'd fallen in love with her quiet strength and warm heart, and the way she made even the most mundane days feel meaningful. The silence that followed felt eternal. Maya watched Sofia's face cycle through shock, disbelief, and something that looked almost like anger. When Sofia finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. She asked Maya if she had any idea how hard it had been to come to work every day, feeling the way she did, believing those feelings were completely one-sided. She described the torture of standing so close to someone she loved, having to maintain professional distance while her heart was breaking. She talked about that night 6 months ago, how she'd been so sure in that moment that Maya felt the same way, and how devastating it had been when Maya had turned away. Sofia said she'd written the resignation letter because she couldn't do it anymore, couldn't keep loving someone from a distance, couldn't keep hoping for something that seemed impossible. Maya felt tears streaming down her face as she listened to Sofia's pain. Pain she'd caused through her own cowardice. But there was something else in Sofia's words, too. Something that made hope bloom in Maya's chest like a flower pushing through concrete. Sofia had said she loved her, present tense, not past. That had to mean something. Maya took a step closer, closing the physical distance between them the way she should have done months ago. She reached out slowly, giving Sofia every chance to pull away, and took her hands. Sofia's fingers trembled in hers, and Maya could feel the pulse point in her wrist racing as fast as her own. Maya asked Sofia not to leave, not to give up on the possibility of them before they'd even had a chance to begin. She admitted she didn't have all the answers and was still afraid of getting hurt. But she was more afraid of spending the rest of her life wondering what if. She promised to try to be brave, to stop hiding behind professional distance and actually show up as her full self. She said she couldn't guarantee it would be easy or that she wouldn't sometimes retreat into old patterns, but she could guarantee that her feelings were real and deep and worth fighting for. And then, because words had failed them for so long, Maya did what she should have done that night 6 months ago. She leaned in slowly, telegraphing her intention. And when Sofia didn't pull away, she kissed her. The kiss was soft and tentative at first, a question as much as an answer. But then Sofia's hands came up to cup Maya's face, and suddenly it was desperate and hungry. 2 years of longing and restraint finally breaking free. They kissed like they were trying to make up for all the lost time, like they were pouring every unsaid word into the connection of their lips. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya saw that Sofia was crying too, but she was also smiling, really smiling, in a way Maya had never seen before. If this story has touched your heart, if you've ever been afraid to reach for what you truly want, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to be brave. Your support means everything and helps us continue creating stories that celebrate love in all its forms. Sofia didn't leave. She tore up the resignation letter right there in Maya's office, the pieces falling like confetti around their feet. They decided to take things slowly, to build something real beyond the walls of the clinic. But they also decided to stop pretending. They stopped hiding the small touches, the shared smiles, the way they lit up when they saw each other. The other staff noticed, of course, but their happiness was too radiant to hide. Maya learned that letting someone in didn't make her weak. It made her stronger. She discovered that vulnerability wasn't something to be feared, but something to be embraced. Because it was the only path to genuine connection. Their relationship wasn't perfect. Maya sometimes fell back into old patterns of emotional distance when things got scary, and Sofia sometimes worried that Maya would change her mind. But they talked through it, worked through it, chose each other again and again, even when it was hard. Maya realized that love wasn't about finding someone who would never hurt you. It was about finding someone worth hurting for, someone worth being brave for, someone who made you want to be better than your fears. 6 months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Maya woke up with Sofia asleep beside her, her face peaceful in the early light. She watched her breathe. This woman who'd been patient enough to wait for Maya to find her courage, brave enough to love her even when it seemed hopeless. Maya thought about how different her life looked now compared to a year ago, how much fuller and richer and more meaningful it had become. She thought about all the moments of connection she would have missed if she'd let her fear win, all the mornings she wouldn't have woken up to this warm presence beside her, all the laughter and tears and ordinary beautiful moments that made up a life, shared with someone you love. Before we reach the end of this journey, I want to ask you something special. If you believe in second chances, if you believe that love is worth the risk, please leave a comment below sharing your own story of finding courage, or tell us what this story meant to you. Your words create a community of support and hope for everyone who reads them. Maya had learned that the bravest thing she could do wasn't building walls to protect her heart. It was having the courage to tear those walls down, to stand exposed and vulnerable, and to trust that the right person would treat her heart with care. She'd learned that hiding behind a smile, behind professionalism, behind fear, wasn't protecting her from pain. It was protecting her from life itself. And she'd learned that some risks were worth taking, that some people were worth fighting for, that love, real love, was worth every moment of fear and uncertainty it took to reach for it. As Sofia stirred beside her and opened those warm brown eyes, smiling sleepily up at her, Maya knew with absolute certainty that she would choose this courage, this vulnerability, this love, every single day for the rest of her life. Because behind the smile she'd worn for so long, there had always been feelings waiting to break free, and in letting them out, in letting Sofia in, she'd finally found what it meant to truly live.